So you're trying to tell me that your great-grandpa was born in 1902 and he never said nothing about mud flood? That's strange, because there's been many mud floods. Maybe he's got amnesia.
The avalanche of mud rolls relentlessly on. Struggling to turn back the torrent, inhabitants quickly throw up sandbag barricades. But there is no stemming the mounting waves of mud. 2,500 residents of Sierra Madre, near Los Angeles, are forced to flee their homes. Tons upon tons of debris cover the countryside. Damage runs into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The muddy coating is 4 feet thick in some places. Homes are engulfed. The job of cleaning up is a monumental task. Bulldozers move in as the stricken countryside tackles Operation Dig Out.
Funny, weird.
Okay, let's explain this a little bit. The mud flood theory describes the idea that a couple of 100 years ago, mankind was almost completely wiped out by a cataclysm that put mud and dirt over all the buildings and streets that were actually not built by us, but the global civilization that lived before this event. And we just dug those buildings out and are now reusing them. It sounds nuts. It sounds insane. But what are your thoughts on insane asylums? Just have a look at these insane asylums. They were everywhere in the young USA, the New World. But besides them looking as good as any European castle out there, why would a city that doesn't have that many people living in it build an insane asylum that could basically fit their entire city in it? Why do government buildings look very similar all over the world? I mean, I personally doubt that China and the US will just hire the same architect. Why does Chicago look like Rome in 1893? Why are domes that feature metal on the top everywhere in the world, and even on many different religious buildings like churches, mosques, temples? What's the point to it? Is a dome with metal on the top just a connection to God in every religion? If you have answers, drop them in the comments. But
after the flood, when Noah steps off of his ark, he looks in the distance to find absolutely nothing. There's no animals because the very last living creatures are on his boat. And definitely no angels because they, along with their once great kingdoms, had finally fallen. But what happens to all these cities and statues built by the angels? I mean, they can't have just disappeared, right? Well, there is this one theory called the Tartarian mud flood. It's a legend of this ancient, lost civilization with access to technology thousands of years ahead of its time. And get this, one day, this empire just disappears. And it seems like they have been buried under this massive, muddy flood. You gotta understand that before the flood, these guys had 1,600 years to conquer the world. There were thriving civilizations everywhere. And with the knowledge of the angels, these guys must have possessed ridiculous technology. So I recently found out about this 2,000-year-old book. It's called the Book of Jubilees. This book actually explains what Noah's life was like after the flood. And this just blows my mind. Because these guys, being the last men on earth, would go up to entire cities to just claim for themselves. They would literally go up to these ruins of these once great palaces to crown themselves king. They would ultimately build a whole new empire out of what was already there. See, after the flood, all the empires built by the angels were just renamed and repurposed. They truly were doomed to become nothing but a shadow of our past.
And they tell us all these megalithic structures, like the pyramids, moving those big giant blocks were all done with manual labor. And yet here we are with all of our heavy machinery, struggling to do it in the modern age. So how did they do it when we still struggle to do it today? Question everything, friends. This is part 2 of the 1915 World's Fair in San Francisco. And stick around at the end for the most beautiful shot of it at night. Just look in the background, full-grown trees. None of this is temporary. At least it wasn't meant to be.
How did they build it? How? Neuschwanstein Castle, Germany. Built on top of 2 earlier castle ruins, this beauty was apparently constructed in 1869 and took only 17 years until it was opened in 1886. Its original plans look straight up out of a Disney film, but even its current state was the actual inspiration for Walt Disney's famous castle. It was concepted by a stage designer. It is integrated into the mountain and is made of 465 tons Salzburg marble, which they not just brought all the way there from over 200 kilometers, but also lifted it up the 900-meter high mountain, like the other 400,000 bricks and 1,550 tons of sandstone that was used in order to construct this castle. How? There are construction photos, but only of the very late stages. There is a painting by Adolf Hitler of the castle, however, and life sure would be different if he would have just stuck to art. It also features various elements of deep mysticism.
What is going on in this picture, and why are there pillars under the US Capitol? And why are there buildings on top of buildings? All these questions lead you to the mud flood. And you may ask, what is the mud flood? The mud flood was a worldwide cataclysm that happened almost 200 years ago. This event wiped out many civilizations and buried many cities worldwide. This would explain why there are so many buried temples and structures around the world. And keep in mind, this was a worldwide event. And just look at this picture of these guys that dug up a statue at Easter Island. Look how far they had to dig down to reveal the whole structure. This just comes to show how huge this flood was. And you may ask, how in the world is a mud flood possible? Watch this video of dirt turning in the mud with the correct frequency. And many people believe the civilization before us were the great Tartarians. But that topic is for another video. I highly suggest you look into the mud flood. It is a super interesting topic. And I always suggest you do your own research on these topics. Like and follow for more content like this.
Here we have a video from the mine explorer in France, where he goes down into a mine with a lot of architecture that would seem to be on the surface, probably at the time of when this little city was around. There's even a car from the early 1900s, and just endless tunnels with stonework. It's definitely an interesting thing to look at, and incredible to say the least. What do you think? Let me know in the comments and follow Question Antiquity for more.
He's saying 2,000 years of history.
Down here is 2,000 years of it. You've got to take me down.
I am taking you down.
Whoa. Look at this.
Welcome to underground Jerusalem.
So, Aziz, tell me, what are you seeing down here? What is down here?
This is probably around the time of the Crusades, the Ayyubite dynasty. And there are very few people who've seen this. We didn't know this exists a year and a half, 2 years ago. So it's an amazing thing what you see right now.
And in terms of levels of history, so you're saying this could be the Crusades. Beneath here,
There is another level. And this is obviously not only under this restaurant, this exists everywhere in the old city in Jerusalem.
whole new stories to be told.